Today we will be in Chapter 2, Section 6, Formulas. Our topic objective for today is to solve a variable in a formula. Chapter 2, Section 6, Formulas. A formula is an equation commonly used to express a specific relationship mathematically. You use formulas all the time. An example of a formula that you probably have seen before in a math class is area, and that's length times width. That's a formula. And so today's going to be all about formulas and just using them. So one of the problems you're going to be doing in 2.6 is something called a simple interest problem. So here's your simple interest formula. Simple interest formula, you're going to have your interest equal to the principal times the rate times the time. Okay, so a lot of times this is shortened to I equals PRT for the principal, rate, and time. So what all does that mean? Well, here's an example. I borrow $10,000 to buy a car. And I'm going to borrow that money for 3 years at a simple interest of 5%. So how much interest am I going to pay? So I'm going to borrow $10,000 for a car for 3 years at 5% interest. So this is a simple interest problem. We have I equals PRT. So in this case, our principal, the amount we're borrowing, is $10,000. The rate is going to be 5%. But when you're dealing with percentages, you've got to convert that over to decimal. And so what you're doing is you're moving your decimal point back to the left 2 points. So 1, 2, and so we get 0.05. And then our time has to be in years, and luckily we are borrowing it for 3 years. So we know everything we need to know in order to come up with our interest, which is our I. So we're just going to plug it into the equation. I equals P, which is 10,000, times our R, which is 0.05, times our T, which is 3 years. If you plug that into your calculator, you get I equals $1,500. So we're going to pay $1,500 in interest on our car over 3 years. Okay, let's do another one. Here's another example. John invests $4,000 that earns interest for 2 years. If he earns $500, what was his interest rate? Okay, again, this is going to be a simple interest problem. We're going to have our I equals PRT, but this time we know what our I is. We don't know what our rate was. And that's okay. We still just have one unknown thing, so we can still solve for that. So in this problem, our P was $4,000. He invested $4,000. Our T was 2 years. Our R, we don't know. That's what we're going to find out. And our interest was $500. He made $500 after 2 years. So let's just plug it into the equation and see what comes out. So our I was 500, our P was 4,000, our R we don't know, and our T was 2 years. So we're going to just simplify. We're taking 4,000 times 2, which gives us 8,000. And we still have the R. So we're solving for our R. So we must divide both sides by 8,000 to get that side to go away. And that will give us 0.0625 equals our R. Now remember, our rate is a percentage, so we need to convert our decimal to a percentage, and by doing that we're going to move our decimal to the right 2 spots. So that'll give us a 6.25%. That was the rate at which he invested his money. So, interest problems, you might be finding the interest, or you might be finding the rate, you could be finding the time, or you could be finding the principal. But it doesn't matter which one of these you don't know, as long as you know 3 of the others. Okay? So those are simple interest problems. You could also have what's called distance problems. So distance problems are going to deal with distance equals rate times time. A lot of times you'll see that written as D equals R times T. Alright, let's do an example. It says Mark finishes a race in 3.2 hours at an average speed of 156.25 miles per hour. What was the length or distance of the race? Okay, so Mark finishes the race in 3.2 hours at an average speed of 156.25 miles per hour. So we need to know what the length of the race was, which is the distance. So we have D equals RT. In this case, we know that our rate was 156.25 miles per hour, and we know our time was 3.2 hours. Excuse me, and so we just need to find our D. So D equals 156.25 times 3.2. If you put that into your calculator, you'll find out that it's 500 miles was the length of his race. A lot of your problems for today's homework and for these assignments with the formulas are just really plugging and chugging. Like you find the equation, you put in the numbers, you pop out the answer. I don't recommend memorizing all of this. I recommend this is the stuff that you want to really put down on your cheat sheet so you don't have to fret over, oh no, what was the distance formula, or what was the simple interest formula. So I'm going to show you the geometric formulas next. Okay, here is a list of formulas that you're going to use in some of your problems today. These are formulas for quadrilaterals and triangles. And notice it gives you a picture, and then it also gives you the area and the perimeter equation. Now obviously you're looking at this and this looks like a whole bunch of information, and it is a bunch of information. Don't get overwhelmed by this and don't feel like you have to memorize these. Remember, you do get a cheat sheet for the final, so this is one of those things that's really nice to kind of have on there if you are struggling with area problems. But just remember that area is everything inside and perimeter is all the way around the outside. So even if you don't know your perimeter equation, hopefully you can think, okay, if I'm just going to walk around the outside of the square, I'm going to go S this way, and S this way, and S this way, and S this way. So it's just S plus S plus S plus S, or 4S. So some of those you won't even need the equations. Sorry about that. You won't necessarily need the equations. You're just going to need to think about what you're actually doing in that problem. And most of your homework, if not, I think all of your homework, only deals with squares and rectangles, and you won't actually have to worry about parallelograms, trapezoids, or triangles. But these are the equations, and it tells you like L and H, and then if you look at your picture, it has all of that labeled for you. So this is a wonderful, wonderful reference tool for you to use when it comes to these problems. Okay, so here's an example of a problem for geometric formulas that you're going to have. And it says Mike Morgan has a rectangular lot that measures 100 feet by 60 feet. If Mike wants to fence in this lot, how much fencing will he need? So that's the first question. The second question is, what is the area of the lot? Okay, so the second question is asking for area. So you already know what that one's doing. The first question says, how much fencing will he need? So the fencing just goes around the outside of his rectangular lot, so that's going to be a perimeter problem. So our perimeter for a rectangle is P equals 2L plus 2W. So our length was 100 feet and our width was 60 feet. So we plugged those into the problem, and we have 2 times 100 plus 2 times 60, and that equals 200 plus 120, so that equals 320 feet. So we're going to need 320 feet of fencing to put a fence around his lot. Now it says, what is the area of his lot? So area was A equals the length times the width. So we had length was 100 and the width was 60. So we take those and multiply them by each other, and that gives us 6,000 square feet. And it's square feet because, remember, this was 100 feet and this was 60 feet, so feet times feet becomes feet squared. Okay, I know that probably didn't seem like a lot of notes, but there really aren't a lot of notes in chapter 2.6, just because it's a lot of just application, so you're just applying some of these equations that they're giving you. So we're going to do some homework problems. I'm going to work 3 of them, and it's just going to kind of work you through how to do some of these. So if you open up your homework and go to question 1, we're going to do number 1, number 2, and number 5. So number 1 says, Thing decided to borrow $4,000 from his local bank to help pay for his car. The loan was for 3 years at a simple interest rate of 6%. So the problem wants to know, how much interest will Thing end up paying? So this is going to be a simple interest problem. So let me click over here. So we have $4,000, we have 3 years, and we have 6%. So remember our interest problem, which I'm going to say I, and that equals our principal times our rate times our time. A lot of times you'll see it written like that. That's the same thing as what we said earlier, principal times rate times time. So our principal in this problem is the $4,000. That's how much he's going to borrow. Our rate is our 6%. But remember, we need to change that over from a percent into a decimal. So we need to move the decimal to the left 2 spots, and that'll become 0.06. And then our time is our 3 years. So we have our interest equals our P times our R times our T. Our P we just said was $4,000. Our R is 0.06 and our T is 3 years. So we need to know how much interest is thing going to be spending. So if you get out your calculator, preferably doing that before, we'll take the 4,000 times 0.06 times 3, and that'll give us 720. So thing is going to spend $720 on interest. Let's go put that into our homework and see if that's correct. Whoops, wrong window. Type 720, hit enter. Hey, we got it right. Good job. Let's do another interest problem, number 2. Okay, number 2 says Mary invested a certain amount of money in a savings account and it pays 3% simple interest per year. When she withdrew her money at the end of 3 years, then she received $360 in interest. So how much money did Mary have in the savings account initially? So this one is still a simple interest problem. The difference is we now know how much interest we have, but we don't know what our principal was. So this is still going to be an I equals P times R times T problem. But this time we don't know what our P is. That's our question mark. We know our rate, which was the 3%. We know our time, which was the 3 years that she had the money invested. And we also know our interest, which is the $360 that she made at the end of those 3 years. So now we need to know what our P is. So let's start with our initial problem and we'll plug in all the numbers that we do know. So our interest was our $360. Our P is our unknown. Our rate is 0.03 and our time is 3. So now we're going to solve this just like we would any other equation. So let's multiply our 0.03 times our 3, and that's going to give us 0.09. We still have our P and we still have our $360. Now our P is multiplying the 0.09. So to get the P by itself, we need to divide both sides by 0.09. Because that'll cause that to go away on that side, leaving the P by itself. And we take $360 and divide that by 0.09. You're going to get 4,000 is equal to P. So that means initially Mary invested $4,000 in this bank account and she got $360 interest. So $4,000 should be our answer. So let's come over here, $4,000. Enter, excellent. So not all the problems are going to be asking for the interest, but notice it gave you 3 out of the 4 things that you needed to know. And that's how all your problems are going to work. It's going to give you 3 out of the 4, and then you just solve for the unknown problem, or the unknown thing. Okay, another type of problem you're going to have is this, where it's not really a word problem at all. It's just asking you to solve for something. So it says D equals ABC, and it says solve for C. So let me write that down, D equals ABC. Okay, so we have D equals ABC, and we need to know what C equals. So what we're going to do in that case is we're going to get C by itself. So to do that, we need to divide both sides by AB. That'll make those go away. So you're left with D over AB, and that equals C. It doesn't really look like we did much work, but that's really what the problem wants you to do. You're just trying to manipulate the problem to look the way that they want you to. So over here, we have A, B, oh, excuse me, A, B's on bottom. We have D on top. Do note though that if it gives it to you in capital letters, you need to put it in capital letters or it will count it wrong. So that's an easy mistake for you to make in doing these problems. It's an easy, couple points off on the final if you make that mistake. So please keep that in mind. All the rest of your problems are going to be like that. This problem, you're just getting the A by itself. This problem, it asks what M is equal to, so you're just manipulating the problem. So you have some interest problems, and then you have 3 is going to be an area problem of a rectangle. Hopefully you can do that. And then all the rest are just solving for whatever they ask you to solve for. So good luck on your homework, and good luck on your quizzes.